63, climb maintain 13,000.
13,000, JetBlue 63.
463, contact the New York Center, 128.3.
28-3, JetBlue 63, good day.
So I'm going to get started here. We're going to start watching a little video. I'm going to cut it up into different segments. We're going to watch the video and then do a little bit of question and answer and talking about each part. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. This will be recorded for YouTube, and we will be setting up a instructional series on there so that you can tune back in, see what we're up to, review your knowledge. First of all, I'd like to welcome our latest first-class passenger, Ninja Forever. And also, I encourage you that if you do enjoy our show tonight, to go ahead and hit that follow button. And maybe even subscribe to one of our many tiers of Sky Lounge members. And also a great shout-out to all of our current subscribed members tonight. So, why don't we get started here? I'm going to put on a little video for just a short period of time, and it will tell you a little bit about the four forces of flight.
What is it that allows this 150,000-pound Boeing 737-800 aircraft to fly? You've probably seen these large jet aircraft before, but have you ever thought about that exact question? What makes it so this 130-foot aircraft can climb thousands and thousands of feet into the air? Is it the two jet engines, both of which produce around 27,000 pounds of thrust? Or could it be the massive 112-foot wingspan? So what is it about this aircraft that allows it to fly? Well, you're about to find out on the aerodynamics of flight. To find our answer, we'll climb into the smaller Cessna 172 SP Skyhawk. It may not be a 150,000-pound jet, but the same principles apply. Most people probably understand that on an airplane, the wings are what allows it to fly, while the propeller or jet engines drive it forward. This is a good base of knowledge for your average Joe. However, a pilot should know there's much more to it than just that. In total, there are four forces that act on an airplane while in flight. These four forces are lift, thrust, weight, and drag. We'll start with lift and work our way from there. Now,
Okay, so you can see here that we have what's called a basic airfoil. You'll find it on every aircraft wing. First of all, I would definitely never suggest painting your aircraft that color. I think you would be ridiculed across the state for your choice in color schemes, but it's the Bumblebee. We've got to go with it. Anyways, so what you see is a flat surface along the bottom and a curved surface along the top. And we are going to explain why that is the case.
the wing itself doesn't generate lift. It's more about the shape of the wing. The wing is shaped like an airfoil. In normal forward flight, wind passing over the wing, called relative wind, is what helps the airfoil generate lift. When air is moving across the airfoil, it is forced to move faster across the top than it is along the bottom. The slower moving air across the bottom puts more pressure upwards on the wing than the faster moving air across the top. This in turn creates lift.
Okay, so lift is a very general term, but it actually is much more interesting than that, in my opinion. As you just saw, he said that the air flows faster over the bottom than it does over the top. So if you look at the very front of the wing and you imagine two molecules of air, the one that goes across the point is that each of these two molecules of air has to meet in the beginning and the end at the same time. So in order for the molecule of air across the top to get to the end of the airfoil at the same time, it has to go faster. So the bottom area creates a high pressure area because of the slower air, which actually pushes the wing up, and then the faster moving molecule of air over the top has to move faster. And Bernoulli's principle, if you've heard of Bernoulli, he said that as the speed of a fluid increases, as the speed of the air increases, the pressure decreases. A good way to explain this is that that when you're driving on the highway and you have a semi-truck that goes by you at a high rate of speed, you'll notice that the car rocks back and forth. That's because the air in between the truck and the car that you're in speeds up and sucks the two vehicles together. So, okay, checking the chat, seeing if there are any questions. So the important part is it's not just a lift. So the bottom is a lift, but the top is a suck. So you're creating a low pressure area, or better known as a vacuum, a small vacuum, and it's pulling the wing into that vacuum.
This is known as Bernoulli's principle. So while the wings are creating the force of lift, which is pulling the aircraft up, they also have the force of thrust pulling the aircraft forward. This is created by the propeller. So you can say that lift and thrust are two forces helping the airplane fly. Now let's look at the other side of that, the two forces that counteract these two. Those forces would be weight and drag. First we'll look at weight. The material used to build this aircraft, along with the pilot and baggage weight, known as payload, and the fuel weight, all make up gross weight. Gross weight, along with gravity, all act as weight pulling down on the aircraft. In order for an airplane to fly, the lift generated by the wings must be equal to or greater than the weight of the aircraft. If your aircraft is over gross weight, and your wings cannot produce enough lift to get you off the ground, the results can be disastrous. Under Flight Simulator 10, in the Free Flight menu,
Scary.
the Fuel and Payload button
It happens
can take
every
you
day,
to the settings to
or at
adjust
least
the
pretty
gross
often.
weight of your aircraft. Your payload, which is your pilots and your baggage, plus your fuel, plus your empty weight will equal your gross weight. You can see that this 737-800 is just under the max gross weight. Opposite of thrust is drag.
Okay, so before we go any further, thank you NSA Donis for adding the Coanda effect, which is also true. You have two different things. If you look at the airfoil on the screen, you have dynamic lift, you have induced lift, and dynamic lift. So induced lift is the low area produced by the air traveling faster over the top of the wing. The bottom part is actually as the air below it is deflected downward, it also creates lift due to an equal and opposite reaction. So what happens then is that as long as you have the thrust to go forward and the wing and the air to go over your wing, you have lift. And also why your aircraft does not instantly fall out of the sky if you do lose power, because there's still wind flying over the wing.
Drag is created simply by the aircraft's existence. An object's natural desire to resist moving through a fluid, such as air or water, is called drag. The effect of drag can best be demonstrated by putting a camera on the tail of the aircraft.
Or by using
Now,
Easy
you
Dock.
notice that the camera shakes pretty violently. This is because of the air pushing against the camera. The camera naturally wants to flow with the air and fall away from the aircraft. But here at GDFS, we're smart enough to know that if you don't strap that camera down tight, you'll never see it again. Oh.
And this happens quite a lot too.
On second thought, maybe we could have tightened those up just a little bit more. But what a perfect example of drag. Now, just like before with lift and weight, thrust must be equal or greater than drag in order for an airplane to fly. Okay, so let's recap. Lift is the force created by the airfoil shape of the wing. Gravity, along with the gross weight of the aircraft, acts as a weight pulling down. The lifting force, pulling up, must be equal to the weight pulling down in order for an aircraft to fly. Thrust is produced by the propeller or jet engine pulling air through the system and moving the aircraft forward, thus creating more lift on the airfoil. Drag is the natural force of an object resisting movement through a fluid, like air. In order for an aircraft to fly, thrust must be equal to drag.
Okay, so I'm going to spare you the rest of the thing. The one constant in aviation is that instructional videos are pretty much can't be interesting, or at least have to be boring in some way or another. So so the deal is you've got weight pulling you down on gravity. You've got lift pulling you up, and the suck from the lift. You have thrust pulling you forward and drag pulling you backward. Now, one of Newton's laws says that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, and an object at rest tends to stay at rest. So you have both forces acting at the same time. So one thing you'll hear pretty often is something called coordinated flight. And let's pull back up the picture here. Coordinated flight is when all four axes, all four forces are equal. And in that sense, you'll see coordinated flight, which you see very often on the Sky Lounge. It's right there. So you've got all four forces working together. Lift equals weight, and thrust equals drag. So you're not gaining speed or losing speed. You're not gaining altitude or losing altitude. This is very important in aviation because this is what makes you be able to control the airplane easily. So what happens is, now that we've gotten coordinated flight down, and I realize that this is pretty basic in terms of we could go into formulas and definitions and things like that, but really the point of the Sky Lounge is to have fun and learn while doing it, and then it's also to get people interested in aviation. So I realize that there's may be a lot of things that I'll gloss over, but just enjoy the show. Just enjoy the ride. So the problem is what happens when the airfoil becomes not so full of air, and the air is not going over it at a very standard rate. That would be called a stall. What happens is that, as you can see on the screen, the lift rises, and the weight in the lift overcomes that weight. But then there comes a point where the air stops flowing over the wing in the way we just described. And what happens then is it's called a stall, where the air actually separates from the wing, the top of the wing especially, and the bottom of the wing creates more drag because it's called something like the barn door effect, where wind pushing against a barn door will create a lot of drag. Let's go to the so the deal is what happens is the air separates from. I don't have the NFL thing yet, but I think yeah. I got the cursor. The cursor will do. I tried Easy Clip, but it didn't seem to want to work at the moment. So what happens is remember that the air starts at the front of the airfoil. The bottom air goes in a relatively straight line. The top air has to go over this curve here and then down. Well, if you imagine that this wing is much higher angle, the air will actually start to create a vortex right in this area. And the air will separate. It'll vortex here, and then it will lose its ability to create lift, and that is a stall. Ah, Lewis Bloom, thank you very much. I appreciate your support, and hopefully there'll be many more to come here. All right, so this is the point where we start getting into some question and answers, and then we'll go on with the second part of our show. So I'd like to create a conversation here where we can all learn from each other as well, and we'll go back to the glorious flight simulator here and get started with a practical application. Yes, sir, Mr. Bloom. It will, in fact, be on YouTube. So, we're sitting in our airplane. We're a young student pilot ready to take to the skies in feats of aerial mastery, but first we have to know how these forces work. So, of course, there's another law called Murphy's Law that says that chase plane doesn't seem to want to get started here. I was trying for 30 minutes. And how can you get out of a stall? Excellent. The way to reduce a stall is to lower the angle of attack, or to make the airfoil, the air over the airfoil flow naturally. So, and that is usually going back to straight and level flying. It is a matter of pushing forward on the stick to decrease the chance of a stall, and it is aerodynamic stall. Excellent. Of course. Baby steps. That I'm going to wait a little bit for that, and the reason being is I don't want to overwhelm our viewers today. But let me see here. Best way to show you is, let's do some flying here. Why not? Because I know that that's what I want to do. So we go ahead, and we're at 0 speed, and we push forward on the yoke, and we turn the volume down so that you all can hear. All right, and we release the brakes. Okay, so act like you're a young student pilot and has a very little knowledge of aviation, and so as we pick up speed, we see that the air starts flowing over the wing. The air starts going over the wing. It starts creating lift. However, because we're at about 48 knots, 48 miles an hour, we do not have enough lift to counteract the force of weight. So that's why we have different landing rolls or different takeoff rolls. That being because different aircraft and different weights need more lift to get over the weight. So a Cessna 172, like we're flying today, doesn't need a whole lot of lift to counteract its weight. It's only maybe 800 to 1,000 pounds. But then, on the other hand, a 747, or the A320 we saw last night, has a tremendous amount of weight, which means it needs more thrust, so bigger engines, and a specially designed wing to carry all of that weight. So, as we pick up speed, notice how the nose, well, it took off a lot quicker than I wanted it to. So the nose lifted because lift became strong enough to lift the nose up, and then it took off actually very easily. And this is why these planes are made the way they are and they're so popular, is that they're designed to be easily be able to fly. So now we're just going to pull back on the throttle. Weight starts overcoming lift. That's the stall horn. Little hard, but I think that's one you can walk away from. I need to get back on the center line here. But notice as weight overtook lift, the aircraft sank again. So let's just go ahead and turn it around here. Ooh. Try it one more time. Let me fix my rudder pedals here. Excellent idea. So what we have here is trim. It's called fine-tuning the aircraft. I went ahead and got the Cessna trim wheel just because I really love it so much, and it's a lot better than the button on my stick. But what happens is that it's a small tab on the back of the plane. I won't get into the specifics now, but it's the horizontal stabilizer. And what that does is allows the plane to be controlled without a whole lot of input force. So, for instance, let's just go ahead and change the trim to a nose-up position. Now what's going to happen is that it's fine-tuned to the nose-up position and will take off a lot earlier than it needs to. See? And that's a problem. As you notice the stall horn is designed to tell you when the air over the wing stops flowing in a normal manner. Now there are different types of stall horns. You have your mechanical one, your electric one, things like that. But and let's try it again. Weight overcomes lift. We start to descend. Notice how we're not falling out of the sky. It is. It really without the trim wheel, we really wouldn't be able to fly aircraft as well. Okay. So we're flying. You'll start to hear the stall horn. The air separates from the wing, and you notice how the weight increases as lift is defeated. So let's try it again. Now we're going to show you coordinated flight. If I can. My awesome rudder pedals here. They are really cool, but I need a board under them to get them to be more give them more authority. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take off. Ignore the center line. It's not the center line you're looking for. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Now notice you had a little bit, because the aircraft was slow and it did take off, it pulled to the left a little bit, which we'll get to in a different episode. So I'll adjust the trim. Remember, being an aviator is all about a level of precision. So if you find yourself drifting away from the center line, that's a part of life. So get back on the center line and straighten up. Because I'm at full power, I'm actually producing a lot of nose low trim in order to counteract lift and not lift at a too high of a rate. So we're going to take off here. Right now, thrust is overcoming drag because we are hopefully, let's put the nose down. We are increasing our speed, and we have a little more lift than weight. So now let's go into a regular climb. Now we see that lift overcomes weight, but we have to trade some of that thrust for drag because the air and the thrust is directed not in a coordinated way. So now we're over the water for everybody's safety on the ground. I'm going to do a slight turn here to give you a little more ground reference. So I'm not I can't, Mr. Edson, I can't answer that for every aircraft, but I know with the Cessna that large changes in throttle and pitch are never really what you want to do. But is that your question? Ah, okay. Okay, so we're going to use our trim. We're at 1,800 feet. Let's go to 2,000. Right now, lift overcoming weight. Speed is slowly rising, so we've got more thrust than drag. I honestly wish I had a little bit of aileron trim. But ASA is extremely precise, and we have to go with it. And I blew through my altitude a little bit. Not a big deal. Let's get back to straight and level. To 2,000. One thing that I do notice about the flight sim is that a lot of aviation is all about flying by the seat of your pants, literally. Like you have to be able to feel the aircraft and what the thing is, what the forces underneath you are, and that's a really handy way to. Thank you, flight crew patron Ra1290. Welcome aboard. Have a seat. Pull up your favorite drink here. Ivana will be happy to supply that for you. So now, as I'm trimming, okay, so we have straight and level flight. We're not descending or get back to 2,000. We're not descending or rising. And we're not gaining speed or losing speed. Ah, yes. A beer. And easier said than done with this beast of a 172. Anyways, so once you have coordinated flight and you understand the basics behind this, it becomes much easier to fly the aircraft, and especially on cross-country trips where you're literally in need of a way to not have to control the aircraft every second of the time, which is then where autopilots come in as well. So, let's see. All right, another question and answer period. Let's see what interesting questions you can come up with. And why don't we try a stall while people are thinking about their drinks here? So we're gonna do a standard stall. I'm gonna apply power. This would be a power on stall. We lift the nose, and as such, the air, even at this range, starts to pull away from the wing. And then as we apply more, and I cannot feel my. To be honest, it's in your butt. You know what's what the way to. Okay, let's try it again here. Let's do power off stall. How about that? Okay, so a power off stall is where the engine is. You're supposed to be simulating a turn from downwind to your base to final to land. You have. We'll just leave it clean here. Okay, so the wind breaks away from the airfoil, and it causes the lift to go away and weight to take over. But the easiest way to recover from a stall is reduce the angle, and then add speed. No, I'm sorry, Sparks. The chase plane is not working. It was working earlier today, and then it just decided that even though P3D is working just fine, that so reduce back pressure, add power. You're producing more lift because the thrust is pulling more wind over the airfoil, and there you go. And notice the altitude. I'm pretty much just about at the same altitude that I was when I started. Ah, okay. Let me just try it one more time here. Let's give a better angle. On an unstable climb out, is it best to punch the throttle and pull the stick back to level out, slowly pushing the throttle up? Nope. Chase plane. On an unstable climb out, is it best to punch the throttle and pull the stick to level out slowly? On an unstable climb out, it is best to level out, stop your climb, and then slowly push the throttle up to increase the thrust. That increases the air over the airfoil, and it also allows the pilot to steadily control the plane. Aha! Yeah, okay. I'm not understanding the question completely. So what he's asking is, on an unstable climb out, your airspeed is low, you're at risk of a stall. The best thing to do is to release the back pressure, gain more energy through your thrust, add throttle, and then regain lift balance. Okay. All right. This is the challenge of reading a chat and answering questions through chat, which this is an interesting experience to say the least. And I do throw my hat off to every streamer out there, because it is literally a labor of love to get a stream started and then to be able to coordinate everything and making it successful, so we can provide content and interesting content for you.
63, climb maintain 13 down.
13,000, Tempo 63.
463, contact the New York Center 128.3.
28 for Agent Blue 63, good day.